Your wealthiest neighbor isn't driving a Ferrari. They're driving a 10-year-old Honda with a small dent nobody's bothered to fix and hiding a 7-figure portfolio behind it that you would never guess exists from anything you can see in that driveway. There's an entire generation that figured out something you were never taught, and they figured it out quietly, on purpose, without a single post about it. Call it stealth wealth, a silent financial revolution where high earners traded status for growth and made sure nobody could tell the difference from the outside. And the harder question underneath all of this is, why are the richest people in your neighborhood the ones intentionally staying invisible while everyone loudly performing wealth is usually the furthest from actually having it? You've been trained to read the wrong signals your entire life, and today you're going to learn to read the right ones. Picture the person you'd assume is doing best financially in your life right now. Newest car, latest phone the day it launches, the trip that's always somewhere new. That person feels like proof that money is flowing, that they've made it, that whatever they're doing is working. Now picture the quiet one. Same car for a decade, same house since before you can remember, never mentions money, ever, in either direction. That person feels like nothing is happening, like maybe they're stuck, like maybe they got left behind while everyone else moved forward. You have those two people backwards almost every single time. The generation that grew up right before constant visibility became the default, before every purchase had an audience perform for, before a car or a bag or a vacation existed partly to be seen, built their wealth in a completely different climate. They didn't have a feed reminding them every 4 minutes what they didn't have yet. They didn't have an audience to perform for. So when they made money, there was nothing pulling it back out of their hands the way there is for you. No comparison loop running in the background of every purchase. The money just stayed. And when money stays instead of leaving, it grows, quietly, boringly, for decades, completely unannounced. That's the entire secret. It's not a secret at all. It's the absence of a habit you never even knew you were forming. Here's what that actually looked like in practice for the people who did it. They bought a car to drive it, not to be seen in it, and they kept driving it long after it stopped being new, because a car that runs is a car that runs, whether or not it impresses anyone in a parking lot. They bought a house they could actually afford instead of the biggest one a bank would approve them for, and they stayed in it instead of trading up every time their income moved, because the whole point was never to look like their income had grown, it was to let it actually grow, undisturbed in the background. They put money away before they ever saw it land in a spendable account, automatically, boringly, the same amount, month after month, year after year, without a single dramatic decision required. Nothing about any of that makes a good post. That's exactly why it worked. Now here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. You are living in the opposite climate. Every single purchase you make happens in front of an audience, real or imagined. Every look what I got moment is competing for attention with 100 other people's look what I got moments all at once, all day, forever. The car you'd choose if literally nobody could see it and the car you choose knowing everyone will see it are not the same car, and you already know that if you're honest with yourself for even a second. That gap between those two choices, repeated every single time you spend money for the rest of your life, is the exact gap between staying visible and staying wealthy. You cannot maximize both at once. Every dollar spent proving you've arrived is a dollar that will never get the chance to compound quietly toward the moment you actually do. This is the part where it turns out this was never really about your neighbor at all. It's about you and the version of rich you've been chasing without ever once being asked if it's the version worth having. Because here's the uncomfortable math nobody puts in a caption. Looking rich and being rich pull from the exact same pool of money, and they're almost always in direct competition with each other. Every visible upgrade, the newer car, the flashier apartment, the trip that exists partly to be documented, pulls money out of the pool before it ever gets the chance to grow. Every invisible decision, the older car kept a few years longer lived in, the modest place lived in while past when you could afford to leave it, the amount set aside automatically before you ever see it, leaves that same money in the pool, untouched, working for years you won't even notice passing. 20 years from now, one of those two paths has a portfolio behind it that nobody could have guessed from the driveway. The other path has a decade of photos and nothing behind them but the next photo. The quiet generation didn't do anything you can't do. They just weren't fighting the same invisible tax you're fighting every single day. The tax of being seen, priced not in dollars, but in every dollar you spend trying to look like you don't need the ones you're spending. So here's what actually changes if you take this seriously. Start asking before any purchase with a visible component a single honest question. Would I still want this if literally nobody would ever see it? Not do I want it, whether you'd still want it in a version of the world with no audience at all. That question alone will quietly redirect more money toward growth than almost any budgeting trick you've ever tried, because it attacks the actual reason the money was leaving in the first place. Next, automate the boring part before you ever get a chance to talk yourself out of it. The people who built wealth quietly weren't more disciplined than you in some heroic, willpower-driven way. They just made the decision once, automatically, and then never had to make it again every single payday. Remove the moment of choice, and you remove the moment where the comparison loop gets a vote. And last, stop reading flashy as doing well and quiet as falling behind. You've had that backwards for years, and it's been quietly costing you every single time you used someone else's visible spending as the measuring stick for your own invisible progress. The Honda in the driveway was never the whole story. It was never supposed to be. That was the entire point. You don't need 30 years or a six-figure salary to start doing this. You need to stop optimizing for what other people can see, starting with the very next purchase you're about to make. The wealth that's still there in 20 years was never the loud kind. It was the kind nobody noticed, built by someone who stopped needing them to. If this made you think twice about the car in your own driveway or the one you're saving up to replace it with, that's exactly the point. There's a lot more of this system worth unlearning. Subscribe and I'll keep showing you the parts nobody else will.